Welcome to the next project, everybody. Chrono Cross. This will be a blind run. I've tried to play this in the past, and I did not terribly enjoy it, but I'm going to give it another chance. The Radical Dreamers edition. So, let's just start with the Radical Dreamers. I know a little bit about this game, but not too much. I don't know anything about Radical Dreamers. The old lady's tip-off was right on the money. The counterspell and the barrier around the outer walls could have done a real number on us. Kid's plain, unadorned braid flickered back and forth across her shoulders as she walked. We picked our way through the elaborate lattice of the manor's magic shields, moving in closer and closer to Lord Lynx's stronghold. There were three of us: Kid, Magil, and me. I guess it must have been 3 years already since I first met Kid. Back then, I was just a wandering musician, traveling wherever my feet would take me and wherever a few tunes would pay for a warm bed. It was in the outlands in a town called Regiora, where we first ran across one another. And since then, she dragged me along on a whole bunch of adventures. And misadventures, too. Ah, Kid. She was a thief. And not just any thief. A few months shy of 17, and already renowned as one of the realm's greatest. More, she was achingly beautiful, stylish, a joy to be around. And a dab hand at campsite cooking. Or so she liked to claim. The truth was a little different. Those bandits with hearts of gold you've heard about in stories, the ones who steal from the rich and give to the poor, yeah, that wasn't Kid's style. She was short-tempered, prone to lying, bossy, and obsessed with money. And rarely did she care to listen to a single word anyone said to her. But she wasn't all bad. Probably. Maybe. Sometimes. She had her moments, anyway. I glanced over my shoulder to see a shadow hovering behind us, blending into the darkness like smoke. Magil. Also known as Magil the Shade. He was Kid's partner, but even after 3 years, I still knew hardly anything about him. All I knew was that he was around 30 years old and not much of a talker. But he was one heck of a mage. I heard that he and Kid had started working together way before I met her. He always covered the top half of his face with a mask, and I'd never seen what he looked like underneath. He was a man so mysterious that it sometimes seemed like he was an interloper from another world. It wasn't like Kid was exactly big on details about her past, but Magil, he might as well not have had one. And Kid didn't seem to know much about her partner in crime either. What kind of man he was, what kind of life he'd lived before. Nothing. You might ask how exactly I wound up being a part of this merry band. Well, it's complicated. I guess you could say that life doesn't always turn out the way you think it will. Kid, who was heading up our little raiding party, suddenly stopped dead. Look lively, boys. We've got company. We glanced around warily as cold, cruel eyes emerged from the darkness. I heard a low growl. Dark shadows prowled through the night, surrounding us. A pack of wildcats. There must have been about 10 of them. A thrill of fear ran down my spine. Flustered, I pulled my knife from my belt. Kid calmly shifted into a fighting stance. Watch yourselves. I don't reckon these buggers have been treated for rabies. The wildcats snarled and growled as they slowly closed in on us, drawing the noose tighter and tighter. Their eyes glinted in the darkness like fireflies, and strings of eager spittle dripped wetly to the ground. Then one of them sent an almighty roar soaring to the moon, and the hunt was on. What was I going to do? I attacked. I slashed a nearby wildcat with my knife. The beast tried to leap clear, but I was already too close. I felt the blade make contact and was rewarded with a screech of pain. The wildcat jumped away, this time managing to put some space between us. It looked like I hadn't cut it very deeply. I stood my ground, changing my grip on the knife and waiting for another chance to attack. Surge! Behind you! Panicked by Kid's warning, I whirled wildly around and came face to face with a pair of eyes blazing like hellfire. There wasn't time to do anything but try to protect myself. In a moment of sheer desperation, I crossed my arms to guard my face. Instantly, I felt the wildcat's fangs seeking my exposed wrist. It had thrown itself bodily at me, bowling me over backwards. Ah! My arm still in its powerful jaws, the wildcat pinned me to the ground and shook its head. I tried desperately to free myself, but it was clamped onto me like a bear trap, and there was no way of getting loose. The sound of fang on bone was sickening. Just then, the creature recoiled with a screech. Kid buried her knife deep into its gut. She quickly capitalized on its terror by giving it an almighty kick. Free of the wildcat, I staggered to my feet, holding the throbbing wound on my arm. I was breathing heavily. The handle of my knife was slick with sweat, and I tightened my grip. With a kick like a bolt of lightning, Kid landed a clean hit on the flank of a nearby wildcat. It staggered before losing its footing, letting out a pathetic cry, but Kid had already moved in to finish it off. And then, the roar of fire, a burning smell filled my nostrils, and next to me, a shrill screech pierced the air. Magil's fire spell engulfed the head of a nearby wildcat. It fled, darting off into the darkness like an arrow. I scanned the area. Only moments ago, we had been surrounded, but now there wasn't a single wildcat left. Kid and Magil had either sent the rest off with their tails between their legs or paid to them once and for all. Ha! You're dreaming if you think a pack of flea-bitten moggies is gonna stop us, Lynx! Kid crossed her arm and flashed a triumphant grin. Meanwhile, I was panting heavily, and it felt like my legs were about to give out from under me. I collapsed to my knees, overwhelmed by what I had just been through. Whew, I'd taken a few hits, but I was fine otherwise. A couple of scars to talk about later, maybe, but nothing that would stop me carrying on. Are you hurt? Magil looked down at me, his face expressionless as ever. No worries, Mag. He'll be alright, said Kid, barging in to get a better look at me. He may be a whinging sook, but it'll take more than a few scratches to kill this one. She was nothing if not sympathetic. But she was right. This was no time to be bemoaning my lot. We hadn't even reached the manor yet. I dabbed at my wounds with a tincture-soaked cloth and wrapped them with bandage, then looked up at the other two. We're just getting started, I grinned back, putting a brave face on things. That's what I like to hear, Kid cheerily announced from close quarters. But then her eyes turned cold like the cool glow of the moon in the night sky. It's gonna be a long night. I nodded, trying my hardest not to utterly lose myself in her pale blue eyes. Alright, let's get this show back on the road. She turned away and marched off deeper into the trees without looking behind to see if me and Magil were following her. Magil, of course, was already right behind her, his unhurried gait making it seem as though nothing much had happened at all. I jumped back up to my feet to chase after them. I'd be in for more trouble than I'd bargained for if I got separated from them. The dark forest inside the manor's perimeter seemed to go on forever, a labyrinth of trees and boulders. The manor itself loomed in the distance, glowering over the vast grounds, and hidden within was a veritable mountain of treasure, just waiting for us. Though Lynx was the noble who ruled the remote territory of Regiora, he was also Kid's mortal enemy. We were there that night to steal a certain jewel he kept locked away in his most closely guarded vault, the Frozen Flame. The Frozen Flame was veiled in mystery. It was said to be imbued with an uncanny energy and possessed of a beauty and clarity that made it a priceless treasure. Countless thieves had tried to steal it, and not one of them had come close to succeeding. Nor had any of them escaped the manor alive. And now it was our turn to try and sneak into this place of death. Led by a girl who had the ambition to make the impossible possible, a hunger for vengeance that drove her onward, and a desire for riches that could never be satisfied. As we pressed on through the tree-filled darkness, the shadows gave way at last, revealing the true extent of the vast mansion. Finally! Say your prayers, Lynx, because we're coming for you! Keeping to the overgrowth in the shadows of the trees, we made our way around the manor walls in search of a means of entry. Eventually, we came to a terrace overlooking the garden. There was no sign of any guards nearby. The only thing surrounding the manor was an uncanny stillness. This will lead us straight into the west wing, just as well. We don't have any business in the rest of the manor tonight, said Magil, gazing up at the dark building towering over us in the night. Alright then, what are we waiting for? With that, Kid made to fall over the railing of the terrace. Stop! Magil hissed sharply. Remember what we're here for. Our main target is the vault and the frozen flame within it. We focus on this above all else. Your vengeance is of secondary concern. Agreed? Glancing over her shoulder, Kid replied with a reluctant, Yeah, don't get your knickers in a twist. But if we happen to run into him, I'm gonna knock that Drongo's block off, and neither you nor anybody else is gonna stop me. I guess Kid was going to get her way whether we liked it or not. Let's go, boys. The night is young. She cleared the railing with a sprightly hop and vanished inside the manor. I glanced toward Magil and nodded in silence. We followed Kid's lead and were soon inside Lord Lynx's lair. The darkness swallowed us whole. corridor stretched off to the left and the right from the terrace. It seemed equally dark and chilly in both directions. Let's go left. We pressed on through the darkness, down corridors that turned and twisted, snake-like this way and that. Everything around us was still and silent, and it felt strangely like we were being watched. It was as if countless eyes were staring silently from the shadows, looking on with curiosity and pity. We continued, creeping cautiously down the corridors. Kid moved proudly and stealthily like a cat stalking its prey, while in the shadows Magil followed, gliding swiftly and silently like a sinister breeze. We pressed on into the embrace of the Weaver of Fate. We took the corridor leading from the left-hand side to the terrace, eventually arriving at an intersection with some stairs. The path to the right led down the stairs, the path to the left was a dark side passage, and the main corridor continued straight onward. We went down the stairs. Slowly, we crept down the staircase, descending deeper into blackness as we went. At the bottom, the path split. The way to the left continued on to an atrium that resembled some sort of plaza, while the path to the right was a winding passageway that trailed off into the darkness. Let's take the passageway to the right. We went down the stairs, then took the passage to our right. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the right-hand side. Something smelled fresh and pleasant. Flowers? Was it coming from inside? We went inside to check. We found ourselves in a tidy, welcoming room. The knickknacks and curios dotted around the place seemed to be well loved. The stately desk and cozy-looking bed nearby, meanwhile, suggested the room's occupant was no stranger to luxury. Though the room was richly furnished, somehow it still felt awfully lonely. The kid took a quick look around before commenting, "It's Lynx's girls' room." A half-written letter on the desk and a teacup, still warm, suggested that the lady of the manor was still nearby. But it didn't seem that anyone was here now. We decided to search the room. Some charming flowers, a discarded cotton handkerchief, a small bottle of perfume, and something moving in the mirror. Is that us? Nothing that meant much to me, nor anything that seemed particularly valuable. Kid seemed to have the same impression and scanned the room clearly, not expecting to find anything. The only item of note was a small antique box, which bore a crest resembling a viper. I decided where to look next. I picked up the little box. I picked up the small wooden box on the bookshelf. I gently opened the lid and was greeted by a soothing melody. A music box? There was something about that song. I know this tune. Kid was standing next to me, and I could see something had changed in her expression. You do, huh, kid? Someone used to sing it to me a long time ago. She turned her gaze downward and went silent. Kid? Startled, she turned to me. Her eyelashes glistened as if wet with dew. She walked to the door, not saying a word. Hey, kid, wait up! We left the room. Was she crying? Was Kid crying? Maybe I was just seeing things. The passage outside the room continued to our left and right. The path to the right led deeper into the darkness of the manor. Meanwhile, going left would take us to the atrium and another branch. Let's go into the darkness. We went down the dark passageway, eventually finding ourselves at a sturdy-looking, immaculately polished door. Kid sniffed the air. Just as I thought. Something stinks here. I reckon we found the beast's lair, lads. In the darkness, Kid's lips twisted into a grin that turned my blood cold. Kid opened the door and slipped inside. It was Lynx's room, but he didn't seem to be around. The bugger's gone and scampered. And scarpered, because he heard I was coming. There was something deeply unpleasant about the room. There wasn't anything unusual about the furniture and fittings, and not how they looked or how they were made, but taken as a whole, it all felt discordant. Was this a reflection of Lynx, a seemingly ordinary facade that hid a disturbing truth only some could see? Let's see what we can find. The desk drawers, the paintings on the wall, the vase on top of the side table, we left no stone unturned. There didn't seem to be anything suspicious, but as I scanned the room, something unusual caught my eye. There was a pedestal on one corner with a significant-looking scarlet cloth drawn over it. I slowly raised my hand toward it. Be careful what you touch in here, warned Magil. I pulled my hand back timidly. But then the cloth flipped back with a flutter without me having laid a finger on it. Did that thing just move by itself? Exclaimed Kid, her eyes wide open with surprise. Gripped by curiosity, we moved in to see what it had been hiding. It was a large antique mirror of an elaborately decorated style I'd seen before. It wasn't the kind of thing that would normally seem out of place in an old manor like this, and yet... "Wait, something ain't right," said Kid. Meanwhile, I was captivated by the gaze of the statue Venus reflected in the mirror. Oh. Suddenly, the eyes of the statue shone with light. "What is your desire?" It spoke with a voice that was crystal clear, yet smoky and husky. "The mirror, it's speaking," I stammered. "Ah, a whispering mirror," muttered Magil, as if he'd seen them 1,000 times before. "What's one of those?" Kid gave Magil a quizzical glance. "A magical mirror in which a spirit dwells. The spirit can freely move between its own and other mirrors, and will share its wisdom with those who ask. Perhaps we should ask it something." I decided to ask it about something that had been on my mind for some time. "I want to know about Magil's past," I said, casting a furtive glance in his direction. "As you wish." The statue of Venus in the mirror turned her gaze downward. As she did so, darkness spread across the mirror's surface, but nothing else took its place. There was only unending black. What did it mean? "Leave the stupid mirror alone and get back to work," snapped Kid. She was already poking and prodding at other things in the room. I stepped away from the mirror and started searching the room again. I took another look around the room. I don't rate our chances of finding much of interest, no matter how hard we looked. What was I going to do? I decided to trust... "All right, Mag, where would you start the search?" He gave a brief grunt and immediately melted into the darkness. The shadows of the desk, the bookshelf, and everything else in the room all began flickering, as if suddenly alive. After a short while, he emerged from the darkness by the bookshelf. I found this. In his hand were some scraps of paper and 3 copper coins. The scraps consisted of a torn-up map of Regiora and an unused sheet of notepaper. "We're not in here to bloody tidy up for him," sighed Kid. "Looks like we're done here then. Come on, let's go." Magil and I followed Kid's lead and left the room. The corridor stretched out beyond the door. The corridor stretched out beyond the door. We retraced our steps. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the left-hand side. It was Riddle's room, Lynx's daughter. Look inside the door. Found ourselves in a tiny well. Ah. Much needed room. Some leaves. It seemed that someone had been here only moments ago. Let us come back later. We left Riddle's room for now. The passage outside the room continued to our left and right. Going right would take us to Lynx's room, meanwhile going left would take us to the atrium and another branch. We continued down the corridor until we reached an intersection. There was a left turn in the corridor leading to some stairs going upward. The corridor also continued straight toward the entrance to a large plaza-like atrium. Kid poked her head through the arch-shaped door and took a look around. Huh, it's big here. It's big in here. Must be some kind of hall. We took a cautious look around, then entered one after another. The atrium was like a beautiful plaza, complete with a statue that doubled as a fountain. Pillars and arches lined the wall. And in the center was a small pool of clear water above which the statue stood. On the other side of the room, I could see another arched entrance like the one we had come through. "Oh, that's cold." Kid was scooping up water from the fountain. I went over to her, resting my hand on the edge of the marble basin, peered into the pool beneath. Shadows flickered under the water's surface. You reckon those fish are rare? As in, valuable? Kid leaned right over the edge. I couldn't see the bottom. I wondered how deep it was. The shadow of one of the fish grew larger and larger. Whoa! Sensing danger, Kid leapt back from the edge. Clack! A fish leaped from the water and snapped at her, its jaws bristling with razor-sharp teeth. Its mouth closed shut on the air where she'd only been moments before, and with a splash, the fish darted back under the water. Piranodons! Deadly carnivorous fish with razor-sharp teeth and powerful jaws that could snap a monster's horn in half. Staring in horror, I watched as the dark shadows began to gather in what little of the pool I could make out. The piranodons must have detected prey. Soon, the room was filled with the sound of splashing and snapping as the fish teamed the water's surface. Bloody hell! Even Kid was uneasy. She took another step back. How many piranodons were in the pool? The thought of what would happen if they all leapt clear of the water and attacked it at once crossed my mind. A bead of cold sweat rolled down my forehead. Suddenly, the water coming from the statue turned crimson and shot in a powerful jet that nearly touched the ceiling. Kid jumped back again. I just stood in shock, watching the torrent of water erupting from the statue. The scarlet waters continued to gush from the fountain. The pool grew redder and started to overflow. We looked on, entranced, but the spell was soon broken, when we realized the water was starting to flow faster and faster over the rim of the basin. The piranodons began to jump and snap at the water's surface with bloodthirsty glee. I was brought to my senses by the dull, slapping sound of piranodons hitting the floor. We rushed to the exit on the other side. Quick, there's an exit on the other side! I pointed at the doorway opposite where we jumped in. I tried my hardest to rush across the red pool, sending up great gouts of crimson water, but it was thick as blood, and I found myself struggling to move. I felt sharp jabs and searing pain as countless piranodons snapped at my legs. Kid gritted her teeth in pain. Surge, we gotta do something before we get turned into mincemeat. What was I going to do? I guess we got to deal with the fish before we get out of here. What? You want to try and pick this little lot off one by one? Kid glared back at me, her face a picture of exasperated disbelief. Don't be a bloody idiot, Surge. You want to die here? While I stood there, my mouth agape, a piranodon sank its teeth into my foot. A jolt of pain surged up my leg, making me jump. What was I going to do? I guess we gotta rush back to where we came. Kid, let's get out of here. In a panic, we splashed through the water back to the corridor we came from. The fangs of the piranodon snapped at my legs, and I felt searing pain, but I had to endure it if I had any hope of reaching the entrance. Breathing heavily, I finally found myself back in the corridor outside. Whew, that was a close call. So that whole thing was a trap, eh? Talk about twisted. Lynx is even more of a sick bastard than I thought. I was about to say he wouldn't have to be if he didn't have to guard against people like her breaking into his home, but I thought better of it. Well, at any rate, I think we can consider that a dead end. Let's go back. Defeated, we left the atrium. Something caused Kid to stop in her tracks. Hello, hello, what do we have here? She pointed to the side of the entryway in the hall. I found myself face to face with the sculpture of an old man's face, with a truly phenomenal beard. The sculpture's eyes seemed to gleam with life. For a piece of marble, it seemed almost too realistic. It's a mouth of truth, announced Magil. An enchanted statue that can tell when you're lying. If it catches you out, it'll bite your hand off. Magil kept his explanation simple so that Kid wouldn't drift off before he got to the important part. Huh, so what's it doing here then? I suspect it's part of a greater mechanism. Stick your hand in its gob, do ya? Righto, let's see what happens, shall we? With a marvelous glint in her eye, Kid darted over it and stuck her hand in its mouth without a moment's hesitation. She stood there for a moment waiting, but it didn't take long for her to get bored. Huh, nothing. Suddenly, I had an idea. Hey, Kid, who's the greatest thief who ever lived? Ha! Me, of course, you drong. Kid answered without a moment's hesitation, and then suddenly her face twisted with pain. The teeth of the marble sculpture clamped down on her hand. It bit me, she cried. Knock it off. Everyone knows it's the truth. Ow! The sculpture bit her again as soon as she spoke. Grr! You little... A cold sweat formed on Kid's forehead. The sculpture was tightening its grip. It won't let go until you say something true. Despite the obvious urgency of the situation, Magil was as matter-of-fact as ever. Just say anything, Kid. Anything, as long as it's the truth. Obviously, Kid wasn't listening. Instead, she just kicked awkwardly at the statue. Oi, Beardy! Let go of me bloody hand! She planted her feet on the other side of its mouth and tried her hardest to pull herself out. She heaved, kicked and stamped, grunted and strained. And then finally her hand popped free. I was taken aback by what I just witnessed and couldn't say a word. See? Told you it was the truth. Kid raised her hand in the air triumphantly as if to demonstrate. I could see heavy bite marks. The sculptor hadn't come away from the struggle unscathed either. Kid's attempt to break free had left it cracked in several places. Magil pointed silently at part of it. I went to take a closer look and saw a pale, fresh-colored tongue. Flesh-colored tongue. I expected her to put something here, commented Magil. Something? What, exactly, I replied. Kid stood there for a moment, lost in thought, and then she started to unload all the knickknacks she'd been carrying. It was a strange collection of odds and ends, pulled out from her pockets, her boots, and even from her braid. All right, Serge, now it's your turn to have a go at that stupid statue. Kid grinned at me, holding her assortment of knickknacks on the palms of both hands. I guess she decided that whatever further horrors the statue had in store, she'd rather not face them herself. Nice, kid. Real nice. Grumbling to myself, I reached out to pick an item. I chose a small silver mirror, a file, a centipede, a tube of lipstick, some dried grapes, a length of fine thread, a sizable petard, a vellum scroll. I took a small bag of dried grapes. One by one, I fed them into the statue's marble maw. It actually ate them. That's enough, Serge. Those are my emergency rations you're wasting. Kid snatched the bag from my hands. I still had the last grape, though, so I popped it into my mouth. It was absolutely delicious. They're not for you either, Sunshine, growled Kid, glaring at me. You gotta take this seriously, Serge, or should I leave you alone with Beardy here? She was clearly annoyed, but I hadn't worn her patience completely thin just yet. I decided to try something else. I chose... One moment. Entirely reasonable to her, maybe. What was she doing with all this stuff? I reached for the rubber centipede. Trying not to think too hard about what I was doing, I stuck it into the mouth of Truth, only for it to fall down the back of its throat. Serge, you'll pay for this, growled Kid, staring daggers at me. Yikes! I'll get it back, I promise. Stealing my nerve, I reached into the mouth of Truth. Suddenly, my hair stood on end. It was licking my hand. The giant, uncanny tongue plopped back and forth across my fingers like a lollipop. Ugh, I'm gonna puke. Keep it together, Serge. Do it for the centipede. Kid's support didn't do too much to help me, but I somehow managed to pinch the centipede with the tips of my fingers and pull it out. You must really love this thing. Not really. I just hate to see stuff go to waste. I'm sorry, what? Why had I even bothered? Well, no luck there either. Want to try something else? Asked Kid almost like it was a game. Well, no look at either. Want to try something? I think I gotta put the scroll in its mouth. I picked up a peculiar piece of parchment. Bracing myself, I shoved it into the mouth of Truth. Nice one, Mr. Master Thief. You think it's a magic scroll or something? Kid doubled over with laughter. Guess that didn't work. With a sheepish chuckle, I pulled it out again. Oops, my hand slipped and the scroll unfurled. It was filled with strange symbols. Noticing the confused look on my face, Magil spoke up. It's a decoding chart used for the Imperial Guard's field reports. Huh. Well, it's all gibberish to me. Wouldn't be much of a code if it wasn't, would it? Kid muttered witheringly. I was too embarrassed to reply. Once I'd clawed back some of my pride, I attempted a recovery. You'll have to walk me through it sometime. She just pouted and looked away. Oh, so you can't read it either. Boy, can I pick my moments. Fine, if you're not going to take this seriously, we're leaving you behind. Sometimes she could be cold as ice. I'd really done it now. She made to leave, but I grabbed her gently by the shoulder. Look, I'm not messing around. I'm sure this next idea is going to work. I'll believe it when I bloody well see it. Kid didn't seem convinced. The stakes were high. I looked again at her collection of knickknacks and chose... Well, we'll keep choosing stuff next time. Until then, everybody.